Um, Here's the thing. When I'm looking for videos online, sometimes, things things that are like really horrendous things, like if I want to find videos on what's going on with the genocide and with the Rohingya, like there's lots of videos online that I could choose from and all sorts of things. When it's something horrendous that the United States has done, it's a lot harder to find those videos. And I don't know why that is. I don't think it's like some sort of secret the United States is suppressing things. I think it is that essentially Americans, which are some of the people that watch stuff online so much, just don't want to know. And Operation Condor falls into that category. This is one of those things that we say, it's like with slavery in the United States. Oh yeah, that happened. We learned our lesson and we're a much better place for it now. In fact, if anything, the United States is great because we moved past slavery. Same thing with Operation Condor. Yeah, that was a bad thing that happened, but we moved past it, and if anything, we're better because we overcame that horrible thing that we did in the past. A little baffling, but this is what we call the 7-year dirty war from 1976 to 1983. Now, I already mentioned with Pinochet that the United States was not happy when a government in the Western Hemisphere went a little bit to the left. And so there's some things you could do about that, right? You could have a coup. That's a good idea. You have a coup and help the right-wing dictator take over from the left wing. But that's messy. Here's the ideal thing: is that you have a democracy, and then you make sure that the left-wing parties can't win. So you give them a chance to win, but you rig the elections so they can't win. And there's ways you can do this. You don't have to just sort of stuff the ballot box. That's the lazy person's way to rig an election. The best way to rig an election is anybody who has a chance of winning who's your opponent, they just no longer exist. Or they have no desire to do it because they know that something will happen. And here's what I mean by this. This is Operation Condor. This was this sort of plan that you watched in that video. It was right-wing South American governments cooperating with the U.S. So we don't have to do a coup. The governments are already pro-U.S. The question is, how do we keep them pro-U.S.? How do we keep the governments in control? And the main way of doing this is not to get rid of democracy, not to stuff the ballot boxes. It's to stop opposition, the socialists, from winning the elections. So how do you do that? Well, the obvious ways you can do it is you could sort of jail them, but then that creates this idea that maybe they're a martyr for the party. Or you could kill them, martyr for the party. This is what ends up happening the most. Somebody who maybe in a couple years has a good chance of winning this particular seat on the Congress, they just disappear. And so you can't say the government did anything. You think that you're pretty sure the government did something, but there's no proof of this. There's no body. They're not in jail. They're just gone. And the government says, I don't know where they went. You should really keep better track of people. And so what happens is, if enough people disappear under those circumstances, then now let's say that you are a potential opposition politician. You are a socialist who could run for this particular seat. But you know that if you decide to do this, there's a good chance you'll disappear. And so you just don't run in the first place. And so what ends up happening is there really isn't any opposition. There's token opposition. And you don't have to stuff the ballot boxes because there's nobody good to vote for on the other side. They've either disappeared or they've been frightened into not doing something about that. And that's sort of how this works, is you just sort of, if there's protests, the protesters just gradually stop protesting, either because they disappear or because you don't want to disappear, so you don't show up to protest. So in Argentina, this was particularly bad, and this right-wing military government in Argentina was really sort of maybe even over the top on this. I mean, this is over the top already, but they were like over the top. And eventually, and this is one of the downsides for the United States. I mean, not only human rights problems, but the more practical problems of this can get out of hand, because now the Argentinian right-wing government thinks we can do whatever we want. And so one of the things they do is they try to reclaim the Falkland Islands, and they invade the Falkland Islands, which were part of the British Commonwealth, and the United Kingdom says, whoa, that's ours. And a whole war starts in 1982 over this, super messy. The UK ends up winning the war, which is not a big surprise, but the fact that there is even this war in the first place is problematic. a lot of the current anti-U.S. feeling in Latin America, and there's a lot of anti-U.S. feeling in Latin America even today. I mean, this is like 1983 is pretty much when it's over. I mean, it probably stretches a little bit into the late 80s, but it's not as sort of obvious as this. And that was, what, 40 years ago? I mean, there's the anti-U.S. feeling in Latin America still comes from this history of the U.S. saying, we'll take over. And it almost feels a little hypocritical now as the U.S. says, we're upset about Russia, intervening in our elections, when the United States really, throughout the Cold War, basically ran elections. And if it didn't run the election, it sort of weighed the scales on behalf of somebody in the election. All right. I'm going to skip this next whole slide, so don't even look at it. It's more information, but you don't need to know that. So that's Argentina. What we're going to talk about next is Brazil. Again, just a slide on it. But you're going to watch a video now about the favelas. This is a favela. A favela is well, we'll talk about that. That's a favela right there. And you're going to look at a video and just sort of walk around a favela in current sort of COVID times and see